You keep waiting for a sign. But what if the sign was you? You don't need to be perfect to begin. You don't need to feel ready to rise. You just need to decide, right now, to act like the person you were born to become. Because the moment you carry yourself like you matter, is the moment the world starts to respond differently. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately shrunk yourself not because others made you feel small, but because you forgot who you are? We've all been there. Questioning our worth. Holding back our voice. Waiting for someone to say, "You're good enough now. You can begin." But the Stoics didn't wait. They didn't ask for permission to live fully. Marcus Aurelius faced wars. Epictetus faced slavery. Seneca faced betrayal. And yet each of them decided, every single day, to show up as their highest self regardless of how the world treated them. In this video, we're not just going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about a decision, the decision to act as if you are the best. Not to impress anyone, but to become the person you were always meant to be. One, you don't need permission to become great. I want to tell you something I wish someone told me when I was 40. You don't need permission to become who you're meant to be. No letter in the mail. No moment where the world stops and applauds and says, "All right, now it's your turn." It doesn't happen that way. And for years, I waited. Maybe you have too. I remember being 42, sitting alone in my car after work. It was late. My kids were asleep. My wife had already turned off the lights. And I sat there in silence, feeling like something was missing. Not because my life was bad, but because I had been postponing myself. Waiting for some green light. Waiting for things to feel just right, more confidence, more time, more support. But here's what I've learned, the world rarely gives you the green light. Sometimes, you have to stand at the red light, look both ways, and go anyway. The Stoics understood this better than most. Epictetus was born a slave. Imagine that, having no control over your own body. But still, he became one of the wisest voices in all of history. Why? Because he didn't wait for someone to grant him value. He claimed it from within. Marcus Aurelius was emperor of Rome, but even he wrote daily reminders to himself, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That line hit me hard. Because I spent too many years arguing with myself internally, debating whether I was ready or qualified to write that book, to speak up in the meeting, to chase the thing that lit me up inside. Maybe you've done that too. Maybe you've told yourself, "When I retire, I'll finally do what I love. When the kids grow up, I'll find myself again. When I lose this weight, when I feel more confident, when I have the money." But here's the truth, if you keep waiting, life will pass you by in the rearview mirror. And one day, you'll look back and wonder, what if I had just started? You don't need more time. You need more belief. You don't need applause. You need permission from yourself. So here's what I did that night in the car. I made a quiet promise to myself. No fanfare. No fireworks. I just whispered, "I'm done waiting. I'll start small. But I will start." And that decision changed everything. I didn't become a different person overnight. But I started showing up with more purpose. And that subtle shift from waiting to walking, from doubt to doing, was all it took to begin becoming someone I could respect again. So if you're hearing this right now, maybe it's your turn to give yourself permission. Not next year. Not when things settle down. Now. You don't have to announce it to the world. Just whisper it to yourself, "I am ready to live like I matter." Because you do. And when you begin to act like the best version of you is already in motion, something inside shifts. The world starts meeting you at the level you show up at. Start now. Begin small. But begin. And from this lesson, we move forward. Because once you've given yourself permission, there's only one thing left: deciding how you'll show up, no matter your circumstances. And that's what we'll talk about next. 2. You are not your circumstances. After I gave myself permission to begin, I was hit with another wave of doubt. I thought, how can I become more, when my life already feels so limited? I was in a job I didn't love. My health wasn't where I wanted it to be. Some friendships had faded. Money was tight. And part of me thought, maybe this is just who I am now. But then I came across a passage from Epictetus. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And for some reason, it landed differently this time. I read it again. And again. It reminded me of something I had forgotten. I am not my job. I am not my bank account. I am not the mistakes I've made. Those are just the things around me. Not who I am. You see, the Stoics taught that our true power isn't out there in the world's approval, or in our status, but in here, in how we carry ourselves, even when the world seems indifferent. Let me tell you a story. There was a time I was overlooked for a promotion. Twice. The second time, I walked out of the office, not angry, just hollow. I felt invisible. Like nothing I had done had mattered. I remember thinking, maybe I'm just not one of those people who wins. But that night, I sat with a cup of coffee and read about Epictetus again. Born into slavery. Crippled. Abused. And still he became a teacher of emperors. Why? Because he refused to let his circumstances define him. He built strength within. He chose his responses carefully. And he lived with purpose no matter what the outside looked like. So I tried something simple the next morning. I showed up to work, not as the guy who was passed over, but as the man who leads himself first. I straightened my back. I listened more. I spoke less, but with more intent. And slowly, my energy shifted. Not overnight, but over time. People noticed. I didn't get the promotion. But I earned something better, self-respect. And once that's in place, life has a funny way of rearranging itself to meet you there. So let me say this to you: if you're in a season where things feel small, where you feel stuck, behind, or forgotten, you are not what happened to you. You are who you choose to become despite it. You are not the rejection. You are the courage to keep showing up. You are not the illness. You are the strength rising from it. You are not the silence around you. You are the voice inside that still says, try again. Your circumstances may shape your path, but they do not shape your worth. That is Stoicism. That is strength. So the next time you feel weighed down by life, remember this: you are not what surrounds you. You are what you stand for. And once you've claimed that truth, you're ready for the next step: confidence without arrogance. The kind of quiet power that doesn't shout, but doesn't shrink either. That's what we'll explore next. 3. Confidence is not arrogance, it's alignment. After learning that I wasn't my circumstances, a new question surfaced quietly in my mind: if I'm not what's happened to me, then, who am I allowed to be? It's strange, isn't it? Even when you've made peace with your past, you still hesitate to step into something greater. Why? Because we fear looking arrogant. We fear others saying, "Who does he think he is? She's acting like she's better than us." So we shrink. We tone ourselves down. We lower our voice, our presence, our ambition just to make others more comfortable. I did this for years. I knew I had ideas worth sharing. I knew I had something in me that wanted to lead. But I held back, not because I lacked ability, but because I didn't want to be misunderstood. But then I read a line from Marcus Aurelius that changed everything. He said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." And I realized, confidence is not about being loud. It's about being true. It's about aligning how you carry yourself with who you actually are. There's no arrogance in standing tall if you're standing in integrity. There's no ego in speaking with clarity if what you speak is grounded in truth. Let me give you a simple example. A few years ago, I was asked to give a short talk at a local community event. Nothing fancy. But still, my old fear kicked in. What if I come off too confident? What if people think I'm full of myself? But then something inside me whispered, stop performing. Just be aligned. So I spoke. Calmly. Honestly. Not trying to impress anyone. Just sharing what I had lived, what I had learned. And after, a woman came up to me and said, there was something peaceful about how you spoke. It didn't feel like you were above us. It felt like you were one of us. That stayed with me. Because that's what real confidence feels like. Not a performance. Not a show. Just quiet alignment between who you are, and how you carry yourself. The Stoics lived this way. Marcus Aurelius could have boasted every day. He was emperor of Rome, after all. But instead, he constantly reminded himself to stay humble, grounded, and present. Not because he doubted himself but because his confidence came from virtue, not validation. Epictetus didn't speak like someone trying to prove his worth. He spoke like someone who knew it. So here's what I'll say to you: if you've been hiding your light out of fear that it might seem too bright for someone else, don't mistake your alignment for arrogance. And don't confuse humility with invisibility. You don't need to brag. But you do need to believe in yourself. Because people don't trust perfection, they trust presence. And when you act from a place of grounded belief, you help others find that same belief in themselves. So walk with calm certainty. Speak with care. And remember, confidence isn't about being better than others, it's about being faithful to who you truly are. And once you've found that alignment, you're ready for the next practice, progress over perfection. Because being the best version of yourself doesn't require you to be flawless, only to keep growing. That's what we'll explore next. For progress is greater than perfection. After I finally gave myself permission to begin, and after I stopped shrinking out of fear of seeming arrogant, I ran into a trap I didn't see coming. Perfection. At first, I thought I was moving forward. I was taking action, speaking up more, treating myself with more respect. But then that old voice came back: it's not good enough. You should have done better. You're still not there yet. I'd record something and delete it. Rewrite the email 10 times. Second guess every choice. And at the end of the day, I felt exhausted, not from doing too much, but from expecting too much too soon. We're taught to believe that being the best means being flawless. That if we make mistakes, we've failed. But the Stoics never taught that. In fact, Seneca said something that broke me open: as long as you live, keep learning how to live. Read that again. Keep learning how to live. Even at 60. Even at 70. Even after a lifetime of trying. We're all still learning. So why do we shame ourselves for not being perfect when even the wisest admitted they weren't done growing? Let me share something personal. When I turned 45, I made a promise to myself: I'd start waking up earlier. Just 30 minutes. To read. To breathe. To do something for me. The first week was solid. The second week, I missed 2 mornings. The third week, I overslept every day. Old me would have said, see? You can't even stick to a simple habit. You'll never change. But that time, I tried something new. I said, okay. So you missed today. Let's try again tomorrow. No punishment. No guilt. Just gentleness. And you know what happened? I didn't give up. I kept going. Slowly. And after a few months, waking up early became normal. Not perfect, but mine. That's when I realized something: progress isn't loud. It's quiet. It's messy. It's patient. It's human. We don't need to get everything right. We just need to keep showing up. Keep trying. Keep learning. The Stoics weren't saints. They were flawed, emotional, imperfect humans just like us. But they kept choosing discipline. They kept returning to virtue, even when they stumbled. Progress means saying, I won't let a bad day become a bad week. I won't let one mistake erase a year of growth. I'll keep going, even if it's slow. And that mindset? It changes everything. Because perfection is a finish line you'll never reach. But progress? Progress is a path you can walk today. So if you're waiting to get it all together before you begin, don't. Just start. Start small. Start shaky. But start. Because in Stoicism, what matters isn't how flawless you look to others. It's how faithful you are to your own growth. So take the pressure off. Let go of perfect. And lean into progress. Because once you stop obsessing over getting it right, you finally free yourself to get it done. And with that, we arrive at the next lesson. 1. The Stoics lived and breathed, you become what you repeatedly do. Let's talk about that next. 5. You become what you repeatedly do. After I let go of the need to be perfect, another truth slowly started to settle in, one I had heard before, but never truly lived: you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. The Stoic philosophers knew this well. They believed that your daily actions shape your identity. Not your intentions. Not your dreams. What you do over and over again. Seneca said it clearly: we become what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And that hit me hard. Because for most of my life, I thought greatness was something that arrived suddenly. Like a breakthrough. A promotion. Some huge moment of success. But life doesn't work that way. Real transformation is quiet. It happens in the small decisions, the tiny, ordinary moments that seem too small to matter, but end up shaping everything. Let me tell you something personal. Years ago, I was struggling with energy. I felt heavy, tired, unmotivated. Not depressed, but disconnected. From my body. From my clarity. I kept telling myself, I need a big change. Maybe a new diet. A new gym. A full reset. But I couldn't stick to any of it. Until one morning, I did something different. I took a short walk. Just 10 minutes around the block. No pressure. No tracking. No rules. Just movement. The next day, I walked again. Same thing. Just a short loop. Then the third day. And the fourth. And somewhere around the second week, something subtle began to shift. I still didn't have a six-pack. I still ate cookies at night. But I started feeling better. Not because I had changed everything, but because I had changed one thing, and done it consistently. And that changed me. I didn't become someone who walks. I became someone who moves. Who makes choices, however small, that align with who I want to be. The Stoics didn't care about public image. They cared about private discipline. Because what you do when no one's watching, that's who you really are. So here's the question I ask myself now, and maybe you can too: what am I rehearsing today, that's becoming my tomorrow? Because when you complain every day, you become bitter. When you gossip every day, you become shallow. When you avoid challenges every day, you become weaker. But when you speak with care, you become wise. When you act with courage, you become brave. When you move your body, you become alive. It's not magic. It's repetition. And you don't need to do it perfectly. Just honestly. just daily. So if you want to change your life, don't wait for a miracle. Choose a practice. Start small. And do it again, and again, and again. Because your habits shape your identity. And your identity shapes your life. That's not just Stoicism. That's reality. And once you realize that you're becoming something with every small choice, you begin to wonder, what am I doing today, that my future self will thank me for? That's what we'll explore next: how to face your flaws, not with shame, but with purpose. 6. Weakness is not shame, it's fuel. By the time I understood that I'm shaped by what I do daily, another truth began to surface. A quieter one, but deeper. You see, it's one thing to build new habits, but it's another to face the parts of yourself you're not proud of. The anger, the laziness, the fear, the regret. We all carry them. And for a long time, I believed my flaws were evidence that I was broken. That if I still lost my temper, still felt insecure, still procrastinated, then maybe I wasn't cut out for growth. Maybe you felt that too. I remember one afternoon I had promised my son I'd be home early to help with his school project. But work ran late. Then traffic. By the time I walked through the door, he had already finished, alone. He didn't say anything. He just smiled and said, "It's okay, Dad." But I could feel it. The disappointment in his voice. I went into the kitchen, leaned on the counter, and thought to myself, why do I keep messing up the things that matter? That moment stayed with me for days. Not because it was a disaster, but because it reminded me of something painful. I had weaknesses I hadn't faced. Not because I was bad, but because I was human. Imperfect. Worn. Flawed. And the Stoics, they understood this. They never asked us to be perfect. They asked us to be honest. And to use every weakness as an opportunity for virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And part of that strength is the courage to look at yourself clearly, not with shame, but with intention. To say, yes, I lose my temper sometimes. Yes, I get scared. Yes, I fail. But this is my training ground. Because when you avoid your weaknesses, they don't disappear. They wait in the shadows. They show up in your relationships. In your habits. In your self-talk. But when you bring them to the light, when you face them without judgment, something shifts. They become fuel. That same anger? It can become discipline. That same fear? It can become preparation. That same shame? It can become empathy for others. The Stoics believed life was a gym, a place to train the soul. And your weaknesses? They are your weights. They exist to be lifted slowly, repeatedly, intentionally, until one day, they no longer control you. So if there's a part of you you're hiding, a pattern you keep falling into, don't turn away from it. Lean in. Ask, what is this trying to teach me? What strength is buried beneath this flaw? How can I grow through this rather than run from it? Because the truth is, you don't become strong by pretending to be flawless. You become strong by practicing, in your weakest moments. That's where character is built. Not when everything is going well. But when you feel like you've failed and choose to rise anyway. So the next time you see your weakness, don't say, "I'm broken." Say, "This is my starting point. And from here, I will build." Because what you build out of brokenness, becomes the most unshakable part of who you are. And once you've made peace with your flaws, you're ready to walk differently. With a kind of strength that doesn't boast but simply shows up. And that's what we'll explore next. Show up like someone who respects themselves. 7. Show up like someone who respects themselves. After learning to face my flaws, not with shame but with purpose, there was one thing I had to ask myself, a question I had avoided for years: If I truly respected myself, how would I show up today? It's a hard question. Because it forces you to see the gap between who you are, and how you've been living. And for me, that gap was wide. I said I wanted more energy, but I stayed up late, scrolling through my phone, numbing my mind with noise. I said I valued my family, but I rushed through dinner, thinking about work. I said I cared about my future, but I broke promises I made to myself, quietly, like they didn't matter. And then one morning, I stood in front of the mirror. Not to fix my hair. Not to check my shirt. But just to really look at myself. And I asked again, would I trust me, if I were someone else? Silence. That's when I realized self-respect isn't a feeling. It's a behavior. It's not something you wait to have. It's something you practice. And the way you practice it, is by showing up. Showing up to your day like it matters. Showing up to your habits like they shape your life, because they do. Showing up to your relationships, not just to receive love, but to give presence. Marcus Aurelius didn't talk much about confidence. But he lived it. Through posture. Through discipline. Through small, repeated acts of self-alignment. He wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being." That line stayed with me. Because most days, I wanted comfort. But what I needed, was commitment. So I started small. I began putting my phone in the kitchen at night. Waking up without distractions. Drinking a glass of water before coffee. Not because it was dramatic. But because it was respectful. Respect for my body. Respect for my time. Respect for the version of me I was trying to grow into. And here's what I learned, the world starts to treat you, the way you treat yourself. If you keep breaking your own word, others stop trusting you too. If you keep ignoring your health, your body stops trusting you. If you keep hiding your truth, your spirit goes quiet. But when you start showing up, even in small ways, you send a message not to others, but to your soul. You say, I matter. My time matters. My presence matters. And that changes everything. Not overnight. But gradually, quietly, powerfully. So if you've been feeling lost, disconnected, out of rhythm, don't wait for the perfect system. Don't wait for a 30-day plan. Just ask, what would someone who respects themselves do, right now? And then do that. Eat the meal that nourishes. Take the walk your body craves. Call the person you've been avoiding. Write the page you said you would. Not to prove anything, but to come back to yourself. Because every time you show up not to impress the world, but to honor yourself, you become stronger. And that kind of strength, it doesn't scream. It doesn't show off. It simply walks into the room with quiet certainty. And next, we'll talk about what that strength creates, excellence that begins with a decision. A standard you set and refuse to lower. Let's explore that together. 8. Excellence begins with a decision. By the time I started showing up like someone who respects himself, I realized something unexpected. Excellence isn't something we stumble into. It's something we decide. Not once, but every day. There's a myth we often carry, especially as we get older. We think excellence is for those kinds of people. You know, the ones. The ones born with drive. The ones who had perfect role models. The ones who just have it together. But the Stoics would disagree. To them, excellence wasn't about talent, background, or luck. It was a choice made deliberately, quietly, and repeatedly. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That line stopped me in my tracks. Because for years, I told myself I wanted to be better. A better parent. A better partner. A better man. But wanting is not the same as choosing. Wanting is passive. Choosing is powerful. Wanting says, I hope this happens. Choosing says, I will show up for this whether I feel like it or not. Let me tell you how this played out in my own life. A few years back, I was at a crossroads in my career. I had a safe job, decent pay. But every morning, I felt empty. I'd sit in the parking lot, coffee in hand, engine still running, just staring at the building wondering if this was it. One day, I asked myself a simple question: if the best version of me walked into that office, what would he do? And the answer was clear. He wouldn't complain. He wouldn't blame his boss. He wouldn't wait for a perfect opportunity. He would decide to bring excellence to where he was, not because the job was perfect, but because he refused to be average. So that day, I walked in differently. Same office. Same people. But a different energy. I started speaking up more. Solving problems before being asked. Mentoring the younger staff. Taking notes in meetings no one cared about. Not for applause. Not to impress anyone. But because I had made a quiet decision: I will live with excellence, even in small places. And over time, everything changed. Not overnight. But steadily. Consistently. And eventually, I was offered a role I had once thought I wasn't qualified for. Not because I had become someone new, but because I had finally started living like someone who had chosen their standard. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't aim to be better than others. They aimed to be better than their past selves. To live with integrity. To act with discipline. To raise the bar, not to show off but to stay true to what matters most. So if you're waiting for the right moment, stop. The moment is now. Excellence doesn't arrive wrapped in motivation. It begins in a whisper, a simple, personal decision that says, from this day forward, I will hold myself to a higher standard. Not for others, but because I respect the life I've been given. That decision? It doesn't just change your actions. It changes your identity. Because once you choose to live with excellence, you stop tolerating what drains you. You start creating momentum. You start becoming the person you once only imagined. And that's when something else begins to happen. Your energy starts to influence others. And that's the lesson we'll talk about next: others will follow your energy. Because leadership doesn't start with authority, it starts with how you carry yourself. Let's talk about that next. 9. Others will follow your energy. When I began holding myself to a higher standard, not to prove anything, but simply because I had made that decision, something unexpected happened. People around me started to change too. And not because I asked them to. Not because I told them what to do. But simply because I was different. I was more present. More focused. More consistent. And people feel that. We don't often realize this, but our energy, our presence teaches others how to treat us, and even how to treat themselves. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the idea that we're all connected. That our inner life affects the outer world. And when you carry yourself with quiet strength, the room responds. When you move with calm purpose, others feel safer. When you speak with clarity without ego, people listen more carefully. Let me share a moment that made this real for me. I was having dinner with my teenage daughter. We don't always talk much, you know how it is with teenagers. Phones. Distractions. Short answers. But that night, I had decided to be fully there. No rushing. No checking my phone. No lecture. Just presence. And somewhere between the mashed potatoes and the silence, she started talking. About a friend at school. About feeling unseen. About her own doubts. And I just listened. Not fixing. Not preaching. Just holding the space. When she finished, she looked at me and said, I don't know why I said all that. But I felt like, you were really here. That moment wasn't about parenting. It was about energy. About showing up with something real. Something steady. Something she could lean on, even if only for a few minutes. And that's what I want you to remember: people don't follow titles. They follow presence. You don't need to be the loudest. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to be grounded in who you are and who you're becoming. Because when you do, others feel that. And they respond. Your calm can settle someone else's storm. Your discipline can challenge someone else's excuses. Your kindness can soften someone's walls. This isn't about control. It's about influence. The kind that begins within and ripples outward. The Stoics understood that the way you carry yourself is a message to the world. A message that says, this is what I stand for. This is what I tolerate. This is what I will not compromise. So the next time you think, no one's watching, it doesn't matter. Remember, everything you do teaches someone something. And when you begin living with clarity, with values, with quiet excellence, others begin to rise to that level too. Not all at once. Not everyone. But enough to matter. So walk with intention. Speak with honesty. Breathe deeply. Be the steady flame in the room, not the wildfire. And as you do, remember this: your energy is your legacy. What you radiate becomes part of what others remember, long after words are forgotten. Which leads us to the final truth in this series. Because if you're going to lead with your energy, you must know how to face failure with wisdom. And that's what we'll talk about next. Failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of the way. Let's walk into that together. 10. Start now. Not someday. After everything I've learned about permission, presence, discipline, and quiet strength, there's one lesson that keeps coming back, again and again: the time to begin is now. Not when it's perfect. Not when it's easy. Now. But that's the thing we all struggle with, isn't it? We say, I'll start after the kids leave home. I'll focus on my health next year. I'll write the book when I have more time. I'll be who I want to be, when life slows down. But here's the quiet truth: life doesn't slow down. It just keeps going. And every time we say someday, we push our own growth further out of reach. The Stoics had no patience for someday. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up. Because you don't have forever. And you don't need forever. You just need today. You need this moment. Let me share something with you. I met a man once, in his late 60s. He told me he had wanted to learn to play the piano his whole life. But work, family, fear, it always came first. He thought he had missed his chance. One day, he was walking past a music store, saw an old upright piano for sale, and bought it on a whim. He said, "That day, I decided I'd rather be a 70-year-old who just started, than a 70-year-old who still wished he had." That stuck with me. Because it reminded me, starting late is still better than never starting. And most of the time, we're not actually late. We're just scared. We're waiting to feel ready. Waiting to be more confident. Waiting for some sign. But the Stoics knew readiness isn't a feeling. It's a decision. When you start acting, you start becoming. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But for real. So what is it you keep postponing? A conversation you need to have? A dream you've buried under responsibility? A habit you've been meaning to build? Start now. Start messy. Start small. But start. Because someday is a myth. And now is the only place where change actually begins. Even a single step taken today is worth more than 1,000 steps you plan to take tomorrow. So no matter your age, your job, your past, You are not too late. You are right on time if you begin. Pause, and when you do, you'll look back in a year, or 5, or 10, and whisper to yourself, "Thank God I started that day." So here's your moment. Not a challenge. Not an order. Just an invitation. To become who you were always meant to be. And to start, right now. So now the question becomes, how do you live this way? How do you act as if you're the best without pretending, without arrogance? What does that look like in real life? Let me walk you through a few moments in your day. Simple moments. But powerful, if you approach them with intention. Mantelpiece clock 1. When you wake up, don't rush. Don't grab your phone right away. Instead, sit on the edge of your bed and ask, how would the best version of me approach this day? Not the most successful version. Not the richest. But the most aligned, the one who acts with purpose. Make your bed. Drink water. Stand tall. Do these things not because they're impressive, but because they're reminders, you respect yourself enough to begin with order. Adult laptop computer 2. At work. You don't need a title to lead. You don't need recognition to bring excellence. You just need to decide, no matter what this job is, I will show up like someone who values their craft. Speak clearly. Take responsibility. Be the one who listens when others complain. Act like the best, because that's how you become the best little by little. Person running 3. In your body. You don't need a gym membership. You don't need to lose 20 pounds overnight. But you can move with intention. Take the stairs. Stretch for 5 minutes. Eat like someone who respects their future. Ask, what would someone in peak health do right now? Then, do that. Not because it's perfect, but because it's a vote for the kind of life you want. Speech balloon 4. In your relationships. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to be the strongest voice. But you can be the most present one. Look people in the eye. Speak with care. Apologize when you're wrong. Forgive when you're right. Because the best version of you doesn't need to win every argument. They just need to keep their peace. 5. When you fail. Because you will. We all do. But the Stoics remind us, the obstacle is the way. So when you fall short, don't collapse. Don't shame yourself. Pause. Reflect. Ask, what would someone who respects themselves do next? Then rise. With more awareness. More strength. And more humility. Sunrise and before you sleep. Don't end the day scrolling. End it with reflection. Marcus Aurelius used to write each night, not to publish, but to realign. You can do the same. Ask yourself, did I live like the best version of me today? If not, where can I show up better tomorrow? Not with guilt, but with clarity. This is what it means to act as if you're the best. It's not about pretending. It's not about playing a role. It's about practicing alignment again and again, until it becomes your default. Because as the Stoics taught us, we become what we repeatedly do. So do it. Not for approval. Not for applause. But for that quiet moment when you look in the mirror, and finally say, I like the person I'm becoming. And when you live like that, your life doesn't just improve. It begins to transform. And those around you, they feel it too. So, what if you just decided not to wait? Not to ask for permission. Not to wait until you feel ready. But to act as if you already are the person you're becoming. Because you are. That version of you. The one who walks with calm confidence. The one who speaks with purpose. The one who lives with discipline, humility, and presence. They're not a dream. They're a decision away. And every time you choose to live aligned with that version, you close the gap between who you are, and who you were always meant to be. This isn't about being better than anyone else. It's about being faithful to the deepest part of yourself. Because when you carry yourself like the best, you stop chasing respect and start embodying it. And that's what the Stoics knew all along: greatness doesn't shout. It doesn't seek attention. It simply lives quietly, steadily, and intentionally. So if this video spoke to you, if even one lesson stirred something inside, I invite you to keep walking this path with me. Blue square subscribe to the channel, not for me, but for yourself. Because we all need reminders. We all need space to grow. And you don't have to do it alone. In the next video, we'll go even deeper into the mindset of unshakable discipline, the kind the Stoics lived every day. Until then, stay strong, stay grounded, and remember, you don't have to wait to become the best. You just have to begin acting like it today.